I'll edit together his engagement video and he'll be like, thanks.
Sure.
You're the best.
So, do you still want to like do the intro and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Or?
All right, everybody, welcome to Crosstalk, second ever episode. I'm Tim.
I'm Chris.
And Chris is cooking up our second ever episode of Crosstalk. He's got the conversation topic today, so I'll let him introduce it for you.
This month we're going to be covering escapism versus realism in film. What takes you out of a film? Your enjoyment. What logic gaps can you forgive? What can you let go in the name of escapism in your enjoyment of film? I think it's a very interesting topic, and I'm going to pass it over to Tim here.
Great. So I'll start the discussion. When I think about escapism versus realism, my mind, and this is probably like really funny, but whatever, we'll just go there. I always think of comic books. So comic books, when I was a kid, were really dorky and just for nerds and geeks and whatever you want to call them. But over time, people have sort of culturally appropriated them. Like whatever your interests are, everyone enjoys them, right? And what I've noticed with comic book movies is that there's two definitive camps, which is interesting because there's basically two definitive comic book posters.
Right.
And in the Marvel universe, you'll see more fantasy elements in their stories.
Right.
And in the DC comic book universe, you'll see more realism in their stories, which is really interesting given that the Marvel universe is more about real, like, life people who are sort of flawed and
Right.
they seem more personable to you. They have these really amazing powers, but they're not characters who are, lawyers and doctors only. They are lawyers and doctors who are also
Just happen to have superpowers.
magicians and can turn to giant rage monsters, right?
Mm.
Whereas DC, there's these really well-crafted stories about these characters who are almost Greek gods, but at the same time, their stories in the films seem to be more
Grounded in reality.
grounded in reality.
Yeah. It's a very interesting point you brought up. With DC, especially Batman, I think really that's where the films from the DC go more grounded. Because Batman being the most popular set of films, it's more grounded, realistic. You have a person, he's a superhero born out of tragedy, and he just happens to be rich, and he has a lot of weapons at his disposal. But it's grounded in him. He has no powers. His powers is his mind, his will, his intelligence. So that's why I feel like those movies are a lot more grounded. Whereas Marvel's a little bit more into the realm of a little bit more out there. Like you got your Doctor Stranges and whatnot.
Yeah.
So that's I could definitely see it from that perspective for sure.
It feels to me like the Marvel universe relies a little bit more on chance and luck and Deus Ex Machina scenarios.
Yeah.
I know DC does that as well, but I think that in the sense of this discussion, that is what's driving the wedge between those two universes. Is there's a lot of scenarios in Marvel where things will just happen sort of and unexpectedly, whereas DC, I feel like the story arc is a little bit better positioned. You're expecting
it's a little bit more defined. They definitely have a place where they want to go with it, and they definitely want to keep it more as grounded in reality as possible. Captain America, I would say, is probably the closest that Marvel has to that sort of thing. Steve Rogers is. I know he has a super soldier serum and the beta rays or whatever they zap him with, basically. But he's essentially a normal person. He just happens to be imbued with extra strength. It's not even super strength per se, but it's just stronger. He's just got the strength of, let's say, 5 to 10 men, right?
Exactly.
And definitely with the Winter Soldier, it was far more. It was filmed like a 70s political thriller, so it was more, and it very much had something to say too about the price of security in the modern age too. So I found that one grounded more in reality than some of the other ones.
Right.
And it's definitely my favorite Marvel film.
Right, whereas some action films, which start off very naturally, like natural in the sense that it's in reality, it's in a scenario that normal people would be in. They get to a level of fantasy, and it throws you out of it.
Exactly.
So you're looking at, for example, and this is one that, again, is close to my heart, but that's okay. Look at the Fast and Furious franchise.
Exactly. I thought you were going to go there.
Those movies, and I was actually talking with someone about this recently, and I think I still hold to this point, but those films started out as sort of grounded in reality. There was things with the stunts and the use of, the double reverse or the, shifting into first gear when you're in whatever gear. Like, you see, as someone who is a car enthusiast, you see them doing these maneuvers and you're like, well, that's not
that
really...
probably can't happen.
Right? But it started off that way. It started as just a movie about kids, or whatever you want to call it, young adults or people in their 20s who are basically delinquents, and they are, it's a coming of age, getting out of a slump, anti-hero type of story, right? Whereas the story progresses on and it starts to get more and more fantastic in what happens. Like, you see Vin Diesel's character catch someone going over an overpass, over the opposite side of the overpass on a mountainside. And he lands on another car and doesn't die.
Yeah, that would...
But, that would never happen in real life,
the laws of physics would just never let that happen.
But here's where I would argue with you and anyone who says, well, that's why it's not a good movie. But I would say that's why it is a good movie, because they've slowly been training you to accept these being superheroes.
And I think it speaks to how well the people who are making it understand the core characters.
Yeah.
And what people actually want from the franchise. You look at something like Die Hard, for example.
I was going to go to that direction next.
Yeah. Something like that. As the sequels go and he progressively turns more into Superman, people hate it more because they like the original where he was grounded. It's a real person in this in this crazy situation, and he happens to get lucky enough to survive it.
But by the time you get to A Good Day to Die Hard,
he can't be killed. Like, there's no way. Like,
and you're like, but it's not interesting anymore.
Exactly. He's flying motorcycles and the helicopters and taking them down, right? But, yeah, it depends on how a movie is marketed, what type of movie, what your expectations of franchise. Again, you can be trained a little bit, or again, I'll use an example that I talked about in the last cross-off, Jurassic World. Mm-hmm. Now I'll point to the director really knows how to pace,
right?
Because in that movie there's so many logic gaps in that. If you stop and think about it, in my personal opinion, it could potentially ruin the movie for you.
And that's where you'll see people who are fans of the film come back with justifications for why things happen. So in the Star Wars franchise, for instance, happens all the time. People will come back and justify weird right decisions. Even in the original trilogy, they'll say, well, this is why Leia kissed Luke, and how come later on in Return of the Jedi it wasn't an issue. Like, they'll find reasons for...
Exactly, an extended universe, or if they're a big enough fan, they'll read the extended universe novels, or a comic book or something that will reference that, and they'll be like, oh, that's why, and now it's in their head. And now it justifies it, because they can forgive a film like that because it's hugely entertaining. Right. Now, on the other side of that, I do want to get to the other side of this, because I do want to bring up this point.
Yeah.
Lots of people love the film Armageddon. I can't stand it. And one reason I can't stand it is because I can't move past the logic gap of it is not easier to train drillers to be astronauts than the other way around. It just isn't. I can't. In fact, on the commentary, I was watching the Honest trailer for it. It's hilarious. Yeah. On the commentary for it, Ben Affleck said, I asked Michael Bay, we were catering once, after we were shooting the scene, I asked Michael Bay, I went up to him, I said, why is it easier to train drillers to be astronauts than the other way around? And he said, Michael Bay just basically told me to shut the F up. So he didn't even have an answer for it. And yet, but it was more, you get more of a relatable everyman feel to a driller than you do an astronaut.
Right. Yeah, totally. It's a good point, and it's why that movie, is arguably a less exciting space movie, or movie about space, than some of the ones we've seen in the past couple of years, right? Exactly. With films like Interstellar and Gravity and now The Martian. And I was going to talk about The Martian. I was going to say The Martian actually is a really good example of a movie that tries really hard to be realistic.
But it's actually not. I've read that.
But it's actually not realistic film. It's got components to it that scientists and people who are botanists or biologists or whatever the different fields that you would need to do a Mars expedition.
Right.
They can't check it off and say this is correct. They'll say that it's really close in certain areas. Like,
right.
yeah, arguably you could survive off of, and I don't want to ruin the movie, but off of certain things for a little while, but not for the same length that the film
portrays it in. Exactly. Interesting on that note too. I've seen a lot of speeches from Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he gets asked all the time because he's a physicist, right? Mm-hmm. So he gets asked an astrophysicist. He gets asked all the time. Watching a science fiction movie, does it ruin your enjoyment? Knowing what you know, does it ruin your enjoyment of it? Yeah. And he's often given the answer, it depends on how it's marketed. If it's a futuristic science fiction movie, and he gives the Star Trek 2009, he'll give that example a lot. He'll say, if you can generate a black hole with red matter, why would you need to drill into the planet? You don't. Right. You can just put it on the surface and it's a black hole. It will set the planet. But he said, I went to it, I saw it, I enjoyed it, didn't ruin it for me. He's like, he says, I know based on what I know that this just doesn't make any sense, but they needed the drilling platform to stage this really cool fight on.
Actually, that raises another interesting point is, can you forgive movies when characters are portrayed by actors who always portray the same characters?
Yeah.
Right?
Again, like everything in life, I would say it depends.
Yeah.
I have seen, like, you take Jai Courtney for example. He's terrible, but he's going to be in Suicide Squad, and I think he might finally have nailed his niche, like in
his
that
character.
film. Yeah, Captain Boomerang. It's going to be silly, but he's got this. He's going to play it the same way, but it might just suit that movie. Mm. So yeah, but
some people are going to see this actor. And they're going to see this character and they'll be like, this guy's an amazing actor. And then they'll be like, oh no, he's a one-dimensional actor.
Yeah. I mean, some people for sure who maybe haven't seen him in other things and be like, yeah, this guy's like pretty entertaining. Mm-hmm. But people who've seen him in several things, like, okay, this is the exact same person, but this style just happens to fit the film he's in.
Right.
So I think that can happen.
Yeah.
For sure.
And that reminds me of another example. The other one I was thinking of was Gary Oldman. So, good example of a character who is always a different character. So the actor is never the same character. I don't think.
No.
But you're like, oh, it's Gary Oldman. But sometimes you're like, who is it? And you're like, oh shit, it is Gary Oldman.
Yeah, great example of that. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but a great example of that is Fifth Element. You don't know it's Gary Oldman until you go and look the film up, because it doesn't look or sound anything like him.
Yeah.
He's got this crazy southern drawl, and he doesn't, like, if you've seen him in Batman films, the glasses and the goatee beard or whatever, right? He doesn't have any of that. He's got this little soul and this crazy sort of headgear wig plastic. Yeah. It's odd. That film's odd anyway. It's quite, and that's a really good one too, where it bombed in theaters, but it's developed a cult following.
And now it's well distributed.
Exactly.
It gets re-released. And it's
people screen it, and it's super odd and super full of holes, but it's just so much fun that you can forgive a lot of the things in it. But your Gary Oldman point, I mean, he is a chameleon, but again, you're right. There are some films that he's in where you're like, it's Gary Oldman playing a character, and other ones you're like, holy crap, that's Gary Oldman.
We haven't really touched on things that happen in films all the time that you sort of accept as being part of a franchise.
Yeah.
We did talk about characterization of a franchise in examples where it's like it can be good and bad, but we didn't talk about specific types of tropes you see in films, and you're like, that's a trope. Oh crap! Now I'm not paying attention to the movie. I'm thinking about tropes.
Like the again, I saw this on a movie roundtable that I often frequent. I mentioned in last month's version, Cinefix. They talk about some of the tropes that they just can't stand, and one of them is the big car flip, where it's a bus or a transport or like a fire truck, and it'll flip all the way over, so it'll go like, it will hit something and it'll flip and it'll go like on its top, right? Yeah. And kind of slide. And not only would it never happen, but it's been done so many times I think pretty much every Terminator movie has done it,
Yeah.
where they do that with the vehicle flip.
And there's a wire that cuts into the truck, and that's what causes it to flip.
Yeah, exactly. And it's been done so many times that you're just like, this again.
Yeah, totally. One of the ones I always think of, and this is, I think, an amazing example, is when you watch a movie, whether it's romantic or not, they'll always fit a romantic subplot in most of the time.
Yeah.
And even more so when they fit romantic subplots in. The people who are falling in love, it's like the guy does incredibly creepy things that would never fly in real life.
I know, yeah.
And then the girl somehow falls for that and is like, oh, my life was... I didn't know what my life was before I met you, and now my life is defined by you.
Exactly.
And it's like...
It's this ideal of romance that doesn't actually exist in real life. Ever. And you get men, and sometimes women as well when the roles are reversed, doing things that are basically stalking.
Yeah.
That you wouldn't really ever get away with. You would probably have a restraining order against you in real life.
Or even if it's not stalking behavior, if it's not creepy behavior, it's like that we're friends, and we are friends for a really long time, and then somehow just magically a relationship sparks out of that.
Yeah.
Which
doesn't often happen.
Like I would say it doesn't often happen in situations where that does happen.
Yeah.
Like, how often do friends become lovers? Very rarely in real life. And then even when it does, it's like more of a slow process than they make it to be in films. Like in films, it's also like there's a light bulb goes off and people are attracted to each other.
Yeah, exactly.
It just drives me nuts.
So, along that topic, I say the best romantic comedies are the ones that point out those things, but satire and movies that are spoofs often will go along that lines too. There's this one movie. It has Amy Poehler and no, it was in Ant-Man. Paul Rudd.
Okay, Paul Rudd.
Yeah. So basically, it's called They Came Together.
Okay.
And they hit all those tropes at the through it, but as they're going through it, they make fun of it. So it's like he goes to her business, and he doesn't know she's there. Like she's trying to find the right outfit, he doesn't know. So instead of him going away, and it's like, oh, she's just impossible. He just goes away and comes back later, and then they still end up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And again, I don't really want to spoil it because it's really good. But like, you think the whole movie that they're the perfect couple and they're telling this story to another couple who's having problems, but really, I hate spoiling stuff,
but films of that nature are the ones where you actually enjoy the tropes or the exploitation of tropes,
right? And
then you say, okay, great. Now this movie is taking us somewhere new. It's going to challenge us in a different way than we're expecting. And that's exactly what movies should do, is make you enjoy them.
Exactly. Army of Darkness, it is my favorite movie of all time. I have seen it, it's probably close to 30 or 40 times. Yeah. I could quote a lot of the movie. Yeah. It's filled with logic gaps, it's filled with bad effects, it's filled with cheesy acting, but that's what they're going for. That's how they sold the movie. It's the labor of love. If you watch any documentaries on it as well, they talk about how they intentionally did a lot of that stuff. But not only that, how they made they had about a dozen skeletons, but they made it look like an army of a couple hundred, and they would have to like blow them up and put them back together. So it was very much a labor of love, and they worked together before, and that's how they wrote the script. They wrote the script to be cheesy and full of that kind of dialogue, but it's so quotable that you throw all that out the window, and it's fun. You just have an amazingly fun time.
But I think people who know that about it enjoy it all the more because they're like, yeah, they made a really cheesy movie, and you enjoy the fact that it's cheesy.
Exactly.
And kudos to, to Bruce Campbell for being, for taking that role.
Exactly, and the series is amazing. But if done right, it can be really effective tool. Like Jason X, for example, it's like Jason in space. That sounds dumb, but it's really, really fun. Like, basically he wakes up the second two teenagers have sex, he gets up off the table and kills somebody. I mean, it's almost like he can sense it, and it's fantastic. And then that little holographic scene they have where he's, where they toss up and he's in this like 1980s Camp Crystal Lake thing, and it's like it's like, oh, we're young teenagers, let's go get naked and have premarital sex and do drugs. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And he just goes and ties him up to sleep and mercilessly beats him against the tree, right? But they so tongue-in-cheek, and it's like that on purpose. And they even say, like, what does it take to kill this guy, like 3 or 4 times? But you can totally forgive how cheesy it is, but it's
right.
on purpose. And again, this comes from a place of respect for the originals, right?
Yeah, totally. I guess that's it. I don't know. Do you think we covered it all?
Yeah, I think we got everything. Yeah.
Awesome.
Do you agree with, perhaps disagree with some of our points here, or are there movies, there are other things for you to take you out of a movie that you can let go? Feel free to comment below, like the video, or even better, subscribe to the channel. Until next time.
I'm Tim.
And I'm Chris.
And this is Crosstalk.